When people mention the name Pablo Escobar, many remember the power, the chaos, and the heavy fame he built. But behind that universe there was another story, that of the woman who lived with him from a very young age, Maria Victoria Henao, who would later use the name Maria Isabel Santos Caballero. Without her, much of the intimate life of the leader of the Medellín cartel would never have been known. Maria was always seen as a reserved figure. At the same time that she was known, little was said about her routine, what she thought, and how she viewed the man with whom she shared her life. And unlike the pattern of several criminal groups, she did not have an administrative role, nor did she appear in the structure of the business. While many wives of leaders worked in finances or helped keep the organization running, Maria lived in a very different scenario. To understand the weight of this story, it is first necessary to look at Pablo Escobar. He was born in December of 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia, into a poor family. He grew up in Medellín with 6 siblings. His father was a farmer and his mother a teacher. Even with little money, they insisted on keeping their children in school. But Escobar did not follow the academic path for long. He dropped out at 17 and fully entered a life of crime. He began selling illegal cigarettes and fake lottery tickets. Later, he became involved in theft, and at the beginning of the 70s he was already participating in operations with other smugglers, including kidnappings to obtain money. He even tried to return to school but did not adapt. Shortly afterward, he founded the Medellín cartel in 1976, setting up routes that passed through Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and later reached the United States. It was in that same year that he married Maria Victoria Henao. Maria's family did not approve of the relationship. They did not like Escobar's background and did not want Maria, still a teenager, to get involved with someone so much older. She was 15 years old. He was 26. Even so, she decided to stay by his side, and the two ran away to formalize the relationship with the help of her grandmother. But the bond between them had begun much earlier. Maria said that she met him while she was still in school. He was seen in the neighborhood as someone influential, a kind of problem solver. People sought him out when they needed help. It was in that environment that their closeness began. The relationship was not free. Her mother imposed several barriers. Even so, Maria saw that relationship as something intense, almost idealized. She said that Escobar was her first love and that their first kiss happened when she was only 13 years old. The romantic vision did not last long. When Maria was 14 years old, the relationship went through striking episodes that she carried for years. She herself said that she was very young, did not fully understand what was happening, and came from a Catholic home, without any preparation to deal with intimate matters. She also said that being so young and so vulnerable, she ended up living moments she did not choose, and that even an early pregnancy was interrupted under his pressure. None of this was shared with her family at the time. Maria kept everything to herself, carrying the promise that Escobar himself asked her to keep. And despite everything, she continued believing that she was living a love story, without the maturity to realize the extent of the imbalance between the two. When they finally got married, Maria believed she was beginning a new phase, but in practice she entered a routine in which she had no control. Escobar did not explain his business and maintained a double life. During the week he seemed like a normal man, present, almost a traditional family father, but on weekends he disappeared. Involved with the cartel he commanded alone. Maria tried to adapt to the new role. However, she realized that inside that house her opinion did not have much space. It was a lifestyle similar to the family in which she was raised. The husband decided and the wife accepted. That did not make the weight of the situation any easier. Soon after the wedding, Maria became pregnant. The detail is that she was still in high school. Her husband and the baby attended her graduation, a scene difficult to imagine today, but one that shows how her youth was crossed by responsibilities that did not match her age. While the world saw Pablo Escobar as the strongest name in international trafficking, Maria lived a completely different reality, trying to understand the man she married without knowing who he really was. Soon after the wedding, Maria Victoria began living surrounded by comfort. Escobar offered everything money could buy, and this coincided with the moment when he was advancing quickly within the criminal world, climbing steps that few reached. The Medellín cartel had existed since the beginning of the 70s, but it truly gained strength after a decisive meeting on a farm in April of '78. From then on, business skyrocketed. By the end of that same year, the organization had already sent to the United States more than 19,000 kilograms of illicit substances. Demand in the American market was high, and that transformed Pablo Escobar into one of the richest men on the planet. That absurd wealth made Escobar dive into an extravagant lifestyle. He bought a huge piece of land in Antioquia, Colombia, and built there the famous Hacienda Nápoles, a property that seemed to come from another world. It was a house in Spanish colonial style, surrounded by gigantic gardens, a lake, a private zoo, and a series of spaces created just for the family. It was in that setting that many memories of the Escobar clan were kept. While the country watched the growth of that empire, the public only saw an ordinary businessman. For criminals, he was a powerful leader who profited millions per day. But inside the house, Maria said that she knew practically nothing about what was happening. The impression is that the two lived in completely different realities. He commanded a gigantic business. She led a domestic routine, taking care of the family without access to the backstage. Even so, she followed her husband's steps without questioning. At the beginning of the 1980s, Escobar decided he wanted to change direction. He chose to try to fulfill an old dream, to enter politics. Having grown up in a modest situation, he never had the means to study until the end and pursue a public career. But now, with unlimited money, he believed that nothing would prevent this ambition. In 1982, he managed to be elected as an alternate member of the Chamber of Representatives. It was only an alternate position within the Liberal Party, but it already guaranteed him parliamentary immunity and the right to a diplomatic passport. With the new status, he tried to improve his image. He began investing heavily in social actions, rebuilding poor neighborhoods, constructing houses, schools, soccer fields, and other projects that marked Medellín. This opened doors and turned him into a beloved name for many people. His fame grew quickly. Suddenly, Escobar was in Congress and living the highest point of his public career. It seemed that nothing would take that shine away. But luck turned. The arrival of Rodrigo Lara Bonilla at the Ministry of Justice changed the course of history. He had already been investigating Escobar since 1976, when the future cartel leader was detained for possession of illegal substances. At that time, Escobar escaped bigger problems by offering money to authorities, a common practice among criminal groups who tried to solve everything through bribery or threats. Escobar was known for using the strategy of silver or lead. Those who accepted the bribe benefited. Those who refused put their lives at risk. For years, that method worked, but Bonilla decided to open the black box. By exposing everything to the public, he dismantled the political facade that Escobar was trying to maintain. The cartel leader fought to remain in Congress, but he could not hold on to the position. He was forced to step down. The humiliation left Escobar furious, and those who irritated him usually faced consequences. 3 months later, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla was attacked by men from the cartel. From then on, the government began to target Escobar directly. Maria remembers that period as one of the most turbulent of her life. She was pregnant with Manuela when everything exploded and had to flee to Panama. It was a routine of hideouts, constant tension, and sudden relocations. She lived following her husband's instructions without arguing, trusting that it was the only way to protect the children. The relationship between the two had already been born full of secrets, and it continued that way. Maria seemed to realize that her husband was involved in dangerous activities, but she remained silent. Her focus was to raise the children and try to maintain some kind of normality, even when that seemed impossible. Over time, Maria's life became increasingly difficult. After Escobar became the most wanted man in Colombia, everything around her turned into a survival game. There was no routine, there was no security, only constant change. One of the hardest moments came when she had to separate from her newborn daughter. It was a decision imposed by the situation, and she did not know when she would see the baby again. This kind of separation made clear the magnitude of the danger surrounding the family. From then on, there were years counting the hours, imagining where the next attack would come from. Maria went through extreme situations, escaped risks countless times, and never knew whether the next day would be lighter or heavier. On January 13, 1988, fear became reality. A car loaded with explosives was sent to the neighborhood where Maria and the children were hiding. The explosion was devastating, leaving people lifeless and injured throughout the area. Little Manuela, who was still a baby, almost lost her hearing from the impact. It was another proof of how that world was becoming increasingly dangerous. No place was truly safe, and even so, Maria kept trying to keep the family united. When Escobar was sent to serve his sentence in 1991, Maria thought that would be the moment when life would finally become stable. But what happened was the opposite. The Colombian government accepted an agreement that allowed the cartel leader to build his own facility and remain there for 5 years without being sent to the United States. Thus was born the prison known as La Catedral, a place that seemed less like a penitentiary and more like an exclusive refuge, built exactly the way Escobar wanted. He spent millions to erect the space, which had comfort, structure, and enough freedom to command his routine without interruptions. It was a prison on paper, but in practice it functioned as a fortress controlled by him. For Maria, that period brought a sense of pause, but it did not last long. Surveillance over Escobar increased, political pressures as well, and soon the government realized it needed to change the rules. As soon as news emerged that he would be transferred to a regular prison, the situation spiraled out of control. Pablo escaped and disappeared again, beginning the largest police manhunt in the history of Colombia. After the escape, Maria's life became an open field. She could not rely on official protection, nor did she feel safe remaining in the same place for long. While Pablo was in hiding, she was the target of attacks, threats, and persecution from groups interested in reaching the trafficker through his family. With each new report about the searches, fear increased over what could happen to her children. There was a moment when the situation reached its limit. International agents, including teams from the United States, even kept Maria and the children in custody. It was an attempt to pressure Pablo to give up his escape. She, however, knew that this would make him even more desperate, and she was not sure whether he could escape another siege. Communication between them was minimal. When they managed to speak, he tried to calm her, saying he was fine and that he would still do everything for the family. But the instability was so great that those conversations only increased the tension. It was during one of those calls that the story changed forever. Pablo phoned Maria and his son, trying to convey security, as if he still had some control over what was happening. But the signal of the call ended up revealing his location to the teams searching for him. Soon after, the news came. Escobar had been located and eliminated in a confrontation with the Colombian police. For Maria, there was no time to process anything. She could not say goodbye. She could not understand how everything ended so quickly. The entire country, on the other hand, exploded in opposite reactions. Part of the population cried, others celebrated. Some treated it as the end of a dark cycle, and others saw it as an irreparable loss. Even after being eliminated, Pablo still moved the country. More than 25,000 people went to the wake and the burial to try to see up close the man who for so long divided opinions. The crowd filled the streets, pushed gates, and turned the funeral into a chaotic event, difficult even for authorities to control. For Maria, that scene only represented the beginning of another battle. She had no space to live her own mourning. She had no privacy, nor guarantees that the threats had ended. Rival groups remained active, and for many, the traffickers' family was still a valuable target. Afraid of being attacked, Maria saw that she needed to take drastic measures. She, who had never participated in her husband's business, found herself forced to speak directly with former crime leaders. They were tense meetings, held in haste, and required high payments to ensure that she and the children would not be attacked. She paid millions, requested guarantees, sought escape routes. It was a period of humiliation, anxiety, and difficult decisions. Only after a long time did she achieve a minimum of security to consider leaving the country. Even so, the greatest concern remained the exposure of the Escobar surname. Carrying that name after everything was practically a sentence. The only solution was to disappear completely. Maria legally changed her name to Maria Isabel Santos Caballero and obtained new documents for the children. It was the only way to prevent the family from being associated with her husband's past and to stop them from becoming targets again. As soon as the paperwork was ready, she left Colombia and sought refuge in Argentina. There, she tried to rebuild her routine, raise the children far from that environment, and maintain a definitive distance from everything she had lived. It was not the ending she imagined when she was young and dreamed of an ordinary life. The years passed. Maria's view of her husband changed greatly. She acknowledged that Escobar had not been a faithful man, nor someone transparent about his true life. Many of the difficulties she faced were direct consequences of his choices. But even carrying so many scars, she never said that she regretted having fallen in love. Time brought a more mature reading of what she lived, without fantasy, without idealization. It was as if a great shadow had guided half of her existence, and she had spent the last years trying to move away from it. Today, to move forward, she and her children need to continue the slow process of healing. A process that does not erase what happened, but that tries to reorganize everything that remained after one of the most turbulent periods in the history of Colombia. Don't forget to subscribe to watch more videos like this.